Hello, I'm Roger Baker, Executive Director of the Stratfor Center for Applied Geopolitics at RANE. This podcast is brought to you by RANE Worldview, the premier digital publication for objective geopolitical intelligence and analysis. Find out how RANE can help you stay ahead of global events at ranenetwork.com.
Welcome to the Essential Geopolitics podcast from RANE. I'm Emily Donahue. Today we're talking about spies. Well, not really spies. One spy in particular, who was recently convicted for what a U.S. attorney has called one of the most brazen and damaging acts of espionage in American history. The case also serves as a cautionary tale for businesses. Sam Lichtenstein is here to talk about this. He's RANE's Director of Analysis. Sam, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Emily.
So can you tell me about this espionage case? What is it?
Sure. So on July 13th, a federal jury found Joshua Schulte, who was a former CIA software engineer, guilty on 9 counts. These included a variety of things, but the most important ones were related to illegally gathering and then transmitting classified information. Now, Schulte had already been found guilty in a former trial of contempt of court and making false statements to federal investigators, but this trial that concluded on July 13th was by far the more important one because it found him guilty on the most important charges. And as you already mentioned at the start of our taping here, this, from the point of view of the American government, really amounted to actually the largest theft of classified information in the CIA's history. So a very big deal. The case really dates back to March 2017, when the hacktivist leak group WikiLeaks published what it purported were thousands of CIA documents that basically dated to 2013 to 2016 timeframe that detailed the really advanced cyber tools, tactics, techniques, procedures that the CIA was using to conduct cyber surveillance and then cyber attacks. These documents were later shown to basically be genuine, and that the CIA had wide-ranging ability to break into a whole lot of electronic devices. So not just what we commonly think of like smartphones or computers, but also a whole host of web-connected devices, so those smart devices, quote unquote, a lot of people have in their homes, like televisions, even refrigerators. As well, this document showed that the CIA, and this is really crucial, could compromise many popular operating systems. So we're talking about those that people use every day that are built by Apple, Google, Microsoft, and others. So this was a massive data leak, not only in the scope of documents, but in the scope of what it showed. I should note that Schulte is actually still facing another separate trial that's still awaiting, so he will still have another judgment day in court. But for now, the really crucial ones related to classified information seems to have been settled on July 13th.
Sam, we often remind our clients not to forget about insider risks. What does the Schulte case illustrate on that front?
A lot, unfortunately, here. And Emily, I think it's really instructive that at the start you framed him as a spy, because when we think of a spy, we often think of a foreign adversary, right? Someone from Russia, China, Iran that's trying to acquire information and that we consider classified and transmit it back to their home government. But it's really important to think about spies not only in terms of external actors, but of course internal ones. And that's where the insider threat comes in. And obviously Schulte really was a tragically excellent case study in just why sometimes the threats are actually much larger inside of an organization rather than outside of that. It actually very quickly became clear to investigators that Russia, China, some of these kind of big nation states that at least some people thought might be responsible for the leak to WikiLeaks really had no involvement in this. And they very quickly zeroed in on the team that Schulte worked for, and then very quickly Schulte himself. And so if you read through media accounts, court documents, other things related to this case, it becomes very apparent that while the CIA and this unit in particular may have been well positioned for these kind of cyber weapons and tools to not be stolen from an external actor or leak out otherwise, they were actually quite vulnerable and susceptible to insider theft. And this is, of course, something that we talk about a lot with our clients and our viewers and readers and all of our platforms that when you're considering not only a physical security, but also crucially cybersecurity, the amount of information that's hosted that can really be easily taken, whether it be sensitive corporate proprietary data, customer information, emails, other sensitive documents, I mean, the list goes on. Here you, of course, have a very tragic case of really impactful intelligence information, but from a corporate perspective, the financial implications, reputational implications, in some cases potentially even legal criminal ones from an inside leak are really manifold. And this case just goes to show how no matter what your external guards are, you also need to invest heavily in ensuring that there's appropriate and proper monitoring to ensure internal safeguards.
So, Sam, beyond insider risks, let's talk about some of the broader implications this case has for corporate cybersecurity.
Sure, there are definitely a lot of takeaways here, and I want to emphasize here that tragically these are things that we hear about all the time. So this is not unique to the CIA. It's not unique to any particular industry or type of company. These are things that all of us can imagine in our day-to-day lives. I think one thing that's really instructive that we don't often think about from a cybersecurity perspective, but which the Schulte case really does an excellent job of highlighting, is the importance of workplace culture and how much it matters to security. If you read a lot of the media accounts and some of the criminal complaints against Schulte, it really becomes apparent. I hate to use the term dysfunctional, but in many cases, that's what his team really seemed like. It was almost a party-like atmosphere, childish, people having Nerf gun fights at work, really engaging in bad humor against one another. And it became very quickly apparent that Schulte had a huge number of grievances against his colleagues and superiors, precisely because of the workplace culture and how poor it was where he worked. And so obviously, the calculations that go into someone conducting the type of action that he did are obviously very deep. They involve a whole lot of considerations, but undoubtedly his grievances at the workplace culture that he found stifling must have been top among them. And what comes out is that you definitely see a clear line between his frustrations at work and his desire to leak this information. So I definitely would highlight the workplace culture aspect, because I think that's probably the thing that most of us from a cybersecurity perspective don't immediately consider. And of course, just from a larger insider threat risk, this is not just a cybersecurity concern, it's also very much a physical security concern when we talk about what can make aggrieved people do tragic things in the workplace. Another thing that I'd highlight here is that implementing lessons learned is really key. After every one of these situations, whether it's a massive data leak or even perhaps more tragically, a lethal violent incident, there is always some sort of an after-action report in which the parties try to figure out what went wrong, how can we stop it from happening again. They'll interview people, they'll put up a list of recommendations, and then oftentimes after a few weeks, months, it's kind of forgotten about. Again, you saw this in the Schulte case. What's really tragic is that there were numerous other high-profile leaks before Schulte. We think of Edward Snowden, Chelsea Manning. Obviously, these weren't against the CIA specifically, but against other major U.S. national security agencies. And there were repeated warnings from both the CIA internally and from other federal watchdogs about the importance and the need for all federal agencies to really amp up cybersecurity efforts. And the CIA's own review of the Schulte case somewhat ironically found that it had not properly internalized the findings of prior reviews. So you can only hope that now what they've learned in the wake of Schulte is something that they've reapplied. And of course, this is again something that's widely applicable beyond the CIA to all companies, the importance of not merely doing due diligence in the wake of one of these incidents and following up, but actually making sure those things get implemented.
Sam Lichtenstein is Director of Analysis for RANE. Thank you, Sam.
Thanks so much, Emily.
Sam regularly briefs our clients on security protocols and guarding against insider threats. You can read his work in RANE Worldview, which is RANE's geopolitical intelligence solution. Sign up today at ranenetwork.com. That's RANE network.com. I'm Emily Donahue. Thanks for listening.